Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's special Strong Community Select Committee, 10th of September. If you'd like to go round and give introductions to who everybody is, that would be lovely. I am the Chair, County Councillor Lisa Dimmock for the Elms ND.
Matthew Gatehouse, Head of Policy and Governance, and here this afternoon, a scrutiny context.
Emma Davis, Performance Officer.
Hi, good afternoon. Richard Jones, Performance Manager.
Good afternoon, Francis O'Brien, Chief Officer Enterprise.
Roger Hoggins, Head of Strategic Projects.
Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Richard John, Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Mon Life.
Councillor Roger Harris, Gristone Ward, Abergavenny, and member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Anne Webb, a member, County Councillor for St Albans and Tintern, and a member of this committee. Thank you.
Councillor Val Smith, member of the Llanbaddock Ward, member of this committee.
Councillor Councillor Jamie Trahan, member of this committee.
Councillor Jane Pratt, member for Llanelli Hill and Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Councillor Tony Easton, Dewster Ward, Caldecott, and a member of the committee, and I got to leave you at 3 o'clock.
Paul Keeble, Group Engineer, Highway and Flood Management.
Graham Kinsella, Traffic and Road Safety Manager.
Mike Collins, Senior Traffic Engineer.
Carl Tewig, Head of Neighbourhood Services.
Richard Roden, Member for Dixton with Osbaston, observing.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies of absence? None. We haven't received any. That's wonderful. Declarations of interest, or as and when? Okay. The public open forum, we do have members of the public here today, but we're going to defer that to item 5, and they're going to come down and speak then, okay? So we'll go to item 4, scrutiny of the executive members on the performance, service, delivery and alignment to the corporate plan. I'm going to hand over to Emma Davis. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon all. This is a report to provide an annual update on progress made during 2018-19 on 2 of the corporate plan goals. Goal C, to maximise the potential of the natural and built environment, and Goal E, Future Focus Council, to ensure that members have an understanding of council performance and are able to scrutinise how well we've performed as an authority. Also included is performance information for 18-19 against a range of nationally set measures used by all the councils in Wales. As you'll all be aware, in February 18, Council approved the corporate plan, and as such, this is the first time we've presented a full annual report to you. Appendix 1 of the report shows our performance management framework, which illustrates how the various strands of our performance fit together. And as such, a lot of the information contained within the report will already be familiar to you, having already been through the scrutiny process through the year. Each of the 5 priority goals in the corporate plan contain commitments to action. The updates provided within Appendix 2 relate to the actions that fall under the remit of this committee, although, as you understand, there will be some crossover with some of the actions, as you will see. And the report also provides an overview of the contribution of the goals to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Each commitment to action has been allocated a progress rating. So there are 4 ratings: progressing well, taking steps, attention needed, and no activity. And an overall rating has also been provided for the goals themselves. And in this instance, both of the goals have been allocated a rating level of 3, which is adequate. It is important, however, to point out that many of the actions included in the report are more focused on the longer term due to the nature of it being a 5-year plan. So we ask that you take this into consideration when scrutinising progress so far. To provide a wider picture of the progress to date, performance indicators are also available to you in Appendix 3. These are called the Public Accountability Measures and are set by Data Cymru. The data included in the report is that we feel is most relevant to you as a committee, and shows how Monmouthshire County Council's performance is benchmarked against other councils in Wales, where we have this information available to us. Finally, just to say that a report of progress against all 5 of our priority goals will be presented to full council on the 19th of September, with a requirement for us to public the report by the end of October, as per the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So finally, to close, members are invited to scrutinise the report. Myself, Richard, and Chief Officers and Cabinet members are here to answer any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Emma. Are you happy now for me to hand over to for members' questions, Richard? Okay, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask or comments to be made by any members and those visiting? Councillor Webb.
Happens quite often, I think, during our other meetings.
Please accept our apologies. Can you contact someone and see if they can look into that? Would you like to come down towards the front and sit by here instead? Thank you. So do any members have any... Councillor Harris, and then I'll have Councillor Eason.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding people hearing, it would be wonderful if all us county councillors actually spoke into the microphone. I've been banging on about it for years and years and years, and it's ever so easy to do. Looking at the Appendix 3, National Performance Indicators, we've got, in progress, we've missed 4, met 4. On the trends, we've declined in 5 and improved in 2. And on the quartiles, we're bottom on 2, lower middle on 1, upper middle on 3, and top on 1. We always are banging on about how wonderful we are as a county council. Is these results because we're only partially the way through, or do we really need to get a big grip? Are we missing out resources somewhere so that we should be up the top on all of them? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I hand over to you, Richard, Emma?
Give it a context in some of the measures. So the measures are set by Data Cymru, so they're consistently measured across 22 local authorities in Wales. It's fair to say some of the ways of measuring aren't always in those areas which are our priorities, nonetheless are important in terms of accountability. Clearly the measures cover a diverse range of service areas, and the rationale for why the performance is at the level it is, hopefully in the comments, gives you that context. Clearly, as you've described, when you set them overall, there's a mixture in terms of trends and performance shown. But I think it's important with this set, we're talking about recycling, then we're talking about food hygiene ratings, road condition, libraries. Obviously, that's one indicator for a range and a complex service areas. So I think it's important to understand the individual issue as well as then looking at them overall and understanding how that fits with our priorities and how that fits with the outcomes as a council we're looking to achieve overall, which is where hopefully the corporate plan comes in terms of setting out how we're progressing against the issues within the corporate plan and the measures, some of which are the same measures as in Appendix 3. Some of those measures are more locally set, where they're more relevant to what we think are our priorities and how we want to measure ourselves. Hopefully gives you a flavour how we're doing then against the areas of focus for Monmouthshire as well. So hopefully overall that gives you a bit of understanding, but I think it's important, as well as seeing the overall trend, to understand the individual issue in each indicator, because they are covering different service areas.
Would you like to come back, Roger?
That's fine, as long as any member of the public reading this report would understand what you just said. If it's clear in there, we don't think we're ever going to get here because of these reasons, or we know we're going to be top of this one because of these reasons. This report isn't just for us, if you know what I mean. And that's what I think we tend to forget quite often in here. There's people outside reading it, and you know, if it's clear to them, that's good.
Councillor Eason.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the corporate goals, there are lots of goals, lots of aspirations, and I think we could spend a lot of time looking at each one individually because they've all got certain questions and certain answers for individual councillors across the county. But I want to hone into your one on 14.4, which is protection and enhance our built heritage, which is the money, the plan of getting grants from the Cardiff Capital Region Fund for the Caldicot Cross destination space up to £10 million. I'd like to have an update on where we are with that because it hasn't started yet. Should have started some weeks ago. Are we still in line to get full funding, and where are we with that particular project at the moment? 40.4, protection and enhance our built heritage. Where are we with the Caldicot Destination Space Programme?
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the Caldicot... Sorry, can you hear me? Is that okay?
Very poor.
It
Very
is
poor.
quiet,
After eat it,
isn't
I think.
Hang on there. Is that a bit better? No, sorry about that. It's a
Sorry.
little quiet. So with regards to the Caldicot Regeneration Scheme, the first scheme that will be going live is the hub that started.
The hub started, yeah.
The tender has just come in. We're evaluating the tenders now. That will be a 12-week programme, and that's on track. The cross scheme, Roger will pick up a little bit more details on that in a moment and where we are with those schemes. In terms of the overarching programme, we have got a process to go through with the Welsh Government. So every scheme that we get to with the Tri-Regeneration Scheme has to go back into the Tri-panel when the tendered costs have been submitted. So we have an in-principle approval from Welsh Government for the various schemes that are part of the programme. And then when we have the certain costs back from the tender, they go back to the Tri-panel for approval. So we've got to go through that in each stage. So the hub will be the first one, and Roger will just touch on where we are with the cross scheme next.
Is it possible to have a programme of what you expect, like a broadsheet to say what's what? As far as I'm concerned, within Caldicot, people are saying what's happening. Well, we know as much as you, so... but that's just one of them. I can ask lots of questions about museums and other things in there, but I just want to hone on that one particularly. Thank you.
Roger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As we speak, there's a meeting with the prospective contractor to undertake the works on the cross, subject to us receiving confirmation of the funding from Welsh Government, from the Minister. So without commitment, there's a meeting on now, and the timescales will be worked out from that, and members will be advised accordingly. It will be down to the detail then of actual starting on site, and that's what they're working on now.
Could I ask one further point? It's to do with the Caldicot Leisure Centre. There's a thought that could be enhanced. Are we making any progress on that, and what is the outline view on that in the future?
Councillor Johns.
Yeah, so on Caldicot Leisure Centre, we approved a report at Cabinet in July that we would begin a feasibility study into renovating Caldicot Leisure Centre. We expect that feasibility report to come back to Cabinet before Christmas this year. And if we decide to give that project the green light, that was a £6 million proposed investment for a complete renovation of the centre. We would expect building work to begin in the first half of next year, and that work would probably take under 12 months to complete. So we'd expect to see a reopening of the centre early in 2021.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this item? Are we happy to move on? Obviously, Francis, can you confirm, will you be able to produce a programme for Tony and for the rest of the members in the area especially?
Yes, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll do a project update for all of the Caldicot Regeneration Scheme and just pull together a 1-2 pager, just give you an indication of the scheme, what it's about, and the timescales and indicative costs.
That'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you ever so much. Okay, thank you both for attending. You're more than welcome to stay if you'd like, but I'm sure you're very busy. Okay,
Chair, do you need us now? I don't think so.
You're more than welcome to stay, but you can go should you please.
One or two other things to do. Thank you very much.
No worries, no problem at all. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5 to present the speeding management process for pre-decision scrutiny developed by the Strong Communities Task and Finish Group. But we do have Mr. and Mrs. Vincent here, so I'm going to hand over to them and let them speak and address us all today.
Thank you for this opportunity to address you. If I say again, quite a lot of you will have heard from me before. My main interest in the papers before you today are only Appendix G of your whole road safety strategy. Appendix G is the speed management strategy. It starts at page 115, I believe, on your copy documents. Last week, when the papers for this meeting were published, the papers that were available online were dated December 2018. We rang to ask if this was correct, and we were told, yes, Mr. Hoggins had updated the paper, but he'd just forgotten to update the header. Yesterday, the 2018 papers had disappeared to be replaced by members' consultation September 2019. So I only hope that in the very short time from yesterday to now, we've been able to review the correct papers. It was surprising to see December 2018 because we frequently discussed the speed management policy here. In fact, this is the third chair that I've addressed here about this speed management policy. It seems to take quite a time to get this sorted. The new document, the members' consultation September 2019, unfortunately is still very much broadly the same as the December 2018. There are some alterations, but it is more or less the Caerphilly document of 2010 that I pointed out at various places back in January 2019. It still shows all the signs of a cut and paste direct from the Caerphilly document with little imaginative or forward thinking of how to deal with a speeding strategy for Monmouthshire County Council. If I could just go through a couple of examples of things that show the way this paper has been cut and pasted and not very well. If you look at paragraph 2 of the Appendix G document, that's the numbered paragraph 2, you'll see that at 2.1 we go to Roman numerals down to 5. At 2.2, 6 is missing and 7 is the next numbering. That, to me, from my experience, is clear cut and paste, and something was sort of missing. Paragraph 3.1 still talks of complaints, although the idea of calling somebody who wants to raise an issue of speeding in their community as a complainant was agreed that that was inappropriate well over a year ago. Para 3.3, the third bullet still talks of children rather than young people aged 16 to 24, which is the correct designation. This was pointed out at a meeting back in March as being the incorrect designation, but it's still there in this paper. Paragraph 6.14 sorry, I like to keep up myself. still refers to a 2002 study. The relevance of that, I just fail to see. It might have been relevant in 2010 when Caerphilly wrote it, but to include it now in a paper 17 years later is just not good drafting. Para 7, evaluation criteria, the heading of that paragraph. 7.1 talks of the intervention criteria. The following paragraphs, 7, 2, 3, 4 and 5, are neither anything to do with evaluation or intervention. There were a few more things along those lines, but I'm not going to go into them all now. We did actually provide Highways with a far more detailed critique of this back at a meeting in March, but I don't believe that any of those things have been taken forward. Appendix G is clearly a very different document to the main road safety strategy document, which is a much more professional drafted document. Considering this is probably the 4th attempt at this speed management, I'm a little surprised at the state that it is still. Turning to what the strategy is trying to do for the county and its residents, it sets out a process to be followed, but it's still, as we've asked before to be recognised, that this is a largely rural county as far as its roads are concerned, as opposed to an urban one. That's one of the main criticisms of this being the Caerphilly-based document, which is far more urban than it is rural. So this strategy doesn't specifically address the differences that there might be in rural and urban speed management needs. It feels very heavily loaded against communities who would just be trying to make their roads safer for all users. Having experienced our own long fight in trying to get a lower limit in our area, I don't see the current proposals as an improved process. It's more a statement of the current process with some minor tweaks, albeit with a result in 6 months rather than the 10 years or more which would be currently experienced by people in communities trying to get lower speed limits. The main process of the proposal for the management policy is based on data gathering, which of course is correct. But the sources will be the council's own measurements, the police, central in Gwent, neighbourhood policing teams, GoSafe, Road Safety Camera Partnership, and community councils. Looking at each of those in turn, the council's own wires across the road do provide accurate speed measurements, but council officers insist, however many times we've tried to point it out to them, that this is against all common sense. They average the measurements out over 24/7 across all vehicle types, so from large Pantechnicons to pedal cycles. And if you average that out over a number of vehicles travelling in an area, you will nearly always come up with an average speed below the current posted limit. Therefore, job done, no lower speed limit needed. This is just patently incorrect to use averages in this way. I know that guidance says that average is a measurement, but it shouldn't be the reason for not lowering a speed limit. Nobody complains about the average vehicle driving along their road. They're complaining about the vehicles that are way past the averages. Police. Statistics are notoriously unreliable. Changes in recording over the years, they're slow in being updated, and not all incidents are reported to the police or recorded. There's no evidence in this paper that Speedwatch or Operation Snap statistics, for instance, may be included. they surely are a set of evidence that would show whether there's a problem in an area. Neighbourhood teams, neighbourhood police teams. Unfortunately, this is envisaged as still being in the era of Dixon of Dock Green, when neighbourhood policemen lived in an area, knew their area, and were involved in their area. Unfortunately, that is not what modern policing or neighbourhood teams are like. We've had experience of police officers coming to our house, not knowing local landmarks, having to be called elsewhere and having to ask directions on where to go. The idea that the neighbourhood policing team is somehow in touch with what goes on in a neighbourhood is just not feasible in this day and age with police staffing, etc. GoSafe.
Just to let you know, you have another 5 minutes.
Okay,
Sorry.
coming closely to the end. GoSafe will often be able to measure speeds, not be able to measure speeds in precise locations where communities feel that there is a problem. Lack of safe parking for camera vans, lack of appropriate street furniture on which to attack their measuring devices. Community councils. Proposal is to ask councils for reports of speed-related incidents. Councils are largely unaware of that sort of requirement to keep such records, including reports of apparent near misses. What's that? Who's to say what is a near miss and what isn't? Are residents aware that they should report near misses, and who is actually going to do so? With all that data gathering, the one thing I would like to say is absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I truly fear that these organisations will be asked for data. The data received will be so flawed that communities will be denied a fundamental safety measure as a result. Poor data and poor analysis equals bad decisions. Locals who live in an area within this proposal are totally excluded from the process. They're not included in any discussions or decisions. They're denied any appeal or redress and are precluded from raising the issue again for 3 years. This just is not the way to serve the communities of Monmouthshire. In conclusion, I'd, as far as I can, recommend that this document is revisited without trying to reheat Caerphilly's version, look at the issue from the residents' point of view, and really start the process from a different place. Instead of trying to find reasons or data that proves no reduction in speed limit is needed, assume that a lower limit is appropriate unless there are strong reasons for denying a reduction. Thank you for listening. I would hope that, once again, having done this, we might actually see some change to this paper, which I've not seen over the past 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Obviously, you're both more than welcome to stay and obviously hear the officer's response. Okay. Roger, can I invite you in now on this?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of very quick points in relation to Mr. Vincent's presentation, which I'll pick up on in a minute. But Paul is actually going to come down and take members through the strategy overall. So just a couple of points. I got to say, you're right that the header did say December the 18th. That was my mistake. However, in big bright letters on the front page, it did say consultation paper September 19th. So I add that in my defence. I stand to be corrected on it, but the speed management aspect of it, perhaps the crux of the strategy overall, is the piece of work which we did on the member and officer working group with contributions from police officers and from Go Safe. So I believe that to be our piece of work, and actually our approach to it is a Monmouthshire approach. I appreciate that there may be some similarities in the general document with the Caerphilly document. I haven't checked. But in terms of the actual speed management element, which I would suggest to members is perhaps one of the crux around some of your concerns, is a Monmouthshire paper. I think, and I will very shortly hand over to Paul, I think the point, however, made by Mr Vincent about absence of evidence is a point well made. Because in many instances, we do not have an accident history to support actions. Nevertheless, there are concerns, and quite rightly so, by residents about speed in traffic. So you have got this mix of the accident waiting to happen as opposed to any evidence to support it. And I believe that's what members and officers were trying to work their way through with the working group, and why you've got an assessment list which we will use on each scheme. Plus, in Monmouthshire, we intend to employ an officer, budgets willing, to actually coordinate this amongst the police, GoSafe and Monmouthshire, which I believe is different to other authorities. So there is some changes which came forward from the working group, which I hope members are happy to receive, and obviously if there's further amendments, then we will make them. But with that, I'll hand over to Paul, who will take you through a presentation which we have used previously, but will help to prompt members about some of the key aspects within this strategy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Roger.
Yep. Oh, and Matt is.
I think I'm plugged in now. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Matt. As Roger said, well, he's given quite a detailed, really, background to this, but I thought it just might be worth recapping about why we're here today. And if we go back to where the journey started, it was something that members were very concerned about when they were going around canvassing and getting lots of emails and correspondence about concerns about speed within the community. So it was identified as an issue that ought to go to a select committee, and that's where it was put on the work plan, and that's where it was started from, really. The initial meeting discussed issues generally around the table, and the major issues were around responsibility, because we have Gwent Police, who are responsible for the enforcement aspects, and also GoSafe as well. And then MCC, as the traffic authority, is responsible for assessing, reviewing, and setting the speed limits. Public are often frustrated about this approach, and they're being passed from pillar to post or from one organisation to the other, and they don't seem to be getting a common response, or somebody taking the lead forwards with their concerns. So the road safety strategy for Wales and the setting local speed limits and MCC's road safety strategy, as Mr. and Mrs. Vincent have expressed concerns about, it may not ideally address the concerns of the community, which are often related to community concerns, perhaps rather than statistically identifying issues. So that was another issue that the members on the select group wanted officers to consider as part of this this policy or process. So it was agreed that to address those issues that I've just outlined, that we would look to prepare a policy, and initially we would look at other authorities and consider best practice. We found a number of speed management policies from other authorities and looked through them, and we identified the best out of those, which one of the documents was the Caerphilly document, and then from that we developed it then to meet the needs for Monmouthshire, picking up primarily on this issue about the community being passed from pillar to post, maybe in terms of when they raise a concern initially, and then how we assess these speed concerns to make sure that they do take into consideration community concerns and not just statistical data, and to tailor it really to make sure that it's addressing Monmouthshire's needs. So that's where we are, if you like, with the strategy from the select committee, and then from that we went around and we held a number of workshops with various parties from the community, which was local members and the town and community councillors. And then also to get a wider audience, we went round to all the area committees as well and did a presentation, and we invited comments back on the documents. I don't know if, Chairman, you want me to go through in detail the actual contents of the road safety strategy, or really just to leave it at that point and offer members the opportunity to ask questions about the document?
I don't believe he needs to go in it in detail, do you? Because obviously we've all read it, and I know some of you have to get away early, and I'm sure you're all eager to ask your questions. Are you happy for us to hand over to you and ask Paul some questions and make your comments? Yep. Are you okay with that, Paul?
Oh, that would be suitable.
Okay, lovely. Okay, I'll hand over to members. Tony, would you like to go first? Councillor Easton, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. To kick off, on your paper towards us today, you've got key issues, and it mentions that within Monmouthshire 5 people were killed in 2017. I think we've got about 40 miles of dual carriageway in this county, which we're not responsible for. I'd like to know, of the roads that we're responsible for, were there any deaths, and what is the statistics for the roads we're responsible for? Motorway, when you talk about motorways and dual carriageways, they're a special case. You don't get pedestrians on them, you don't get cyclists on them, you do get motorbikes. So what are the statistics in Monmouthshire on Monmouthshire's roads? Were in 2017 anybody killed? And because looking at it statistically, across Wales, there were 5 people killed in Monmouthshire, yet 101 killed across Wales, which seems to put Monmouthshire in a higher category of deaths than the other counties. But I think this is most probably tainted by the fact that we got maybe 40 miles of dual carriageway. To take them out of the equation, one death is too many, I accept that, but we can only talk about what we're responsible for. So I'd like to know really more statistical evidence of our roads that we are directly responsible for, which we're talking about today. We can't control motorways, we can't control dual carriageways.
Okay, Chairman. Well, I can. You're correct in that, because the way the Welsh government asked for the data to be reported, it's based on the county, and that includes the trunk road and motorways. And Monmouthshire has quite a high number of motorways and trunk roads, in terms of length within its boundaries, and the majority of fatalities are relating to those roads. And just as a aside, when you take those out, Monmouthshire is has one of the lowest accident records within Wales, which is something we should be very proud about. But obviously, we would like it to be, absolutely no fatalities in the county, and that is an aim of the Welsh Government's road safety framework, is to have 0 fatalities on the roads by, within the next few years. But that's going to be very difficult to achieve. Obviously, it depends on the causations of those, I guess. But that's a very high-level statement from the Welsh Government about 0 road accidents. But that is, when you look into it, it's more relating to how those accidents, the cause of those accidents.
That's quite clear. But we look at it as councillors within our own wards and within our immediate vicinity. For example, in Lisa and my ward, we got the B4245, which has shown quite a number of accidents. I don't think there have been any deaths in a number of years. There has been deaths on that road. I know one in particular, but statistically, we've got to see what we need to do to prevent accidents. Any accident is one too many accident. there are questions about 20-mile-an-hour zones. We got in my ward is a completely 20-mile-an-hour zone. A lot of people don't abide by it, but it at least is there to try and control traffic. We've got another ward coming up with 20-mile-an-hour, and you're looking at the other parts of Caldicot that's 20-mile-an-hour, and maybe Undy and Mega. So in the round, we've got to look at what we need to do to create a safe environment for all road users. How far down that road do you think we're going as a county now, not just in the south of the county?
To Tony.
Can you rephrase it and try us again?
Well, we got the speeding group looking across. It started off it came from various areas in the county, like Tintern, the road up through St Avons. Now we got Tintern questioning it. We got areas in Caldicot. What more do we need to do to implement speeding group strategy to make our roads safer, that we're control of? I think that's really it in a nutshell. I can't expand it any more than that.
One of the major reasons why the speeding group was created was actually at the behest of the Gwent Police, because we found that campaigners were picking off various groups, for want of a better description. They were going to the local authority, they were going to the police, they were going to Go Safe, and they were using various avenues within those organisations to make their point. It was quite a legitimate way of going forward. But what it meant was we were all therefore approaching it in different ways. The members' working group, after contributions from police officers, various police officers, and we had one officer who subsequently retired, but he sat on the group, and Go Safe and members and officers sat on that group to look at the process by which we ascertain whether or not a request to introduce a speed management scheme, whatever that might be, should be assessed. Out of that came the crux of it was the selection criteria which we've come up with and coordinating it through a single point. To get over the problem whereby various organisations were dealing with it in isolation, you have approved an officer within the budget, so as Monmouthshire has a single point of contact who will therefore coordinate with the police and with Go Safe in order at looking at the merits or not of any request, be that coming from a member or from a residents group or from a community council. It's not provided in here, but when we worked with members, they worked up a tick list, a checklist. You haven't brought it?
Yeah, Graham's got copies.
You've got a copy there? Anyway. And on that checklist, there are various items which would include any accidents, but it also includes like reports from members of near misses. It also includes what properties are on there. So is there a school on there? Is there houses on there? What properties are on there? What history have you got? So it's not explicitly now around your speed information, which we were relying on because we recognised that was causing members concern. We have added to that, so you have other opportunities in which to submit to that. But there is then a scoring matrix, and we put that scoring matrix together, and they either come out as, and I'm trying to remember whether it's green we're going to do something or green we're not, but it comes out with green, amber and red as to what action is going to be taken. In other words, we consider that it's appropriate that action should be taken, and therefore it's included as a scheme within the overall programme for traffic management. It's amber, in which case we will request further information. In other words, we don't believe the case at this time to be proven, but we need further information. Or green, we don't believe that to be the actual, that there is no grounds upon which to introduce extra traffic management or speed management measures. We will then write out to those to the campaigner or lobbying and to the local member, cabinet member, with the outcome of that and the rationale behind it. But we're also going to include what other action they may take should we stop short of putting in a particular scheme. So that is, quite frankly, that's the crux of what came from the working group and is actually reflected in the speed management strategy within the report. And the sheet which you are missing, which probably would have benefited you, was the actual scoring matrix. But I can confirm that was the outcome of that working group and what came forward. Graham has got some copies of the matrix. And if you run through that, you will see the types of things which we are now going to take into account. It seeks, as far as possible, to try and quantify those requests which we receive. There is obviously a level of qualitative judgment there has to be, because without the accident record and yet concerns remain, then there has to be a judgment element within that. But with this document, we have endeavoured to try and record the rationale behind that decision, whatever it may be. So hopefully that's a brief canter back over the work of the working group and this scoring matrix and the actual speed management strategy, which is actually irrespective of whether the basis of the broader document be in terms of the speed management strategy. This is a Monmouthshire issue, because we are now going to employ somebody to take this on, as I say, budget willing. But that it has been included so far within budgets and within your manpower budget. So that will help to coordinate it, and I would suggest help members to deal with, whichever way it goes, any requests which come forward around speed management, which we know and recognise is one of the key issues which members encounter with their residents and constituents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Just quickly, you say the complaint will need to be logged via the My Monmouthshire app. Whereabouts on the app do they log a complaint of issues of speeding?
Chairman, it's under the highways web page. If you go on there, then you'll find the My Mon.
Do you mind if I just go through this, just so I know exactly?
Tell us.
So we've
Under the traffic and road safety form on
You've got transport and parking, roads, pavements and curbs, health and safety, grass, trees and hedges, council tax, pay it, your say, planning and housing, social services, schools and learning, things to traffic, roads, right, okay, traffic, road safety, and that's the applicant, right, okay, because I was struggling to find that. Sorry.
So if it helps, as a newbie to this service, I just tried Googling it. So I Googled speeding complaint Monmouthshire, and the third search down took me straight into the complaints page, which I guess is probably how a member of the public would find it, rather than going through our actual organisational website.
Thank you very much. Do any other members have any questions? Okay, Councillor Val Smith, then Councillor Webb and Councillor Dudley.
It's going to be a series of comments, actually, Chairman. I'm a long-standing member of this council, or various councils, and the huge issue over my elected tenure has been road safety, and also safety in other aspects. It's been the most important thing, the most criticised system. The most complimentary one was the waste collection has always gone down well. So I was very pleased when the speed management proposal came forward, but I've been very disappointed with the route that it's taken, because I've had the opportunity lately to sort of sit and do a bit of thinking, and really it would have been wonderful if this council could actually have sat down and said, this is a huge problem. What we're doing actually at the moment, we're just presenting the same procedure that we have at the moment. Make a complaint and it either goes to Go Safe or to the police or where others. We have been passed around in circles, passed from pillar to post. So now there's a hope to clarify the system. Okay? So I'm not saying that your system now is not going to clarify, you go through these various steps. But I think it would have been wonderful if as a council we could have sat back and thought, this is a huge concern to our county. It's probably a huge concern to other counties in Monmouthshire, in Wales. It is. The United States has got a gun culture. We've got a car culture, I think, in this country. So going back many years, if my memory is correct, Go Safe, which is a separate setup, was actually encompassed within the police authorities. Am I right on that, Roger? I understood that. But we now have 3 bodies. And I think it would have been very good to have looked at the issues now and thought, is this sensible to actually have the administrative cost of the police, our local authority, and another body to address these issues? Shouldn't it be contained within either Monmouth or the police authority? Is there a requirement for a 3rd body which adds confusion and administrative cost and work? There's that administrative cost that is now being incurred by that 3rd body. We are proposing now as an authority to take on an additional member of staff to deal with that liaison, which I quite frankly feel should be within the police authorities thing. There's no reference really to technology. The technology that exists now, and I'm hopeless as everybody knows with technology. I'm not had a computer working for 10 days, but it doesn't matter. The technology exists to monitor. We have not got the capacity or the finances, physical or financial, to have policemen standing on every corner or Monmouthshire County Council officers trying to monitor. We should be looking at, okay, what is appropriate technology to see installed in Monmouthshire? What's working well elsewhere? Look at the entry to Newport, where they have, is it 20 miles an hour that so many people bleat about? But their traffic speed is down. They have a camera that continually monitors. People that go excessive speed, they exceed the speed limit there, they receive a polite notice and a financial request. You've got a similar setup on the Crumlin Road. Out of Pontypool, on the old Crumlin Road, you have a static camera. Well, I presume it's still working because everybody complies. As soon as you come to that road, they slow. So the technology is there. We've not got an inkling here. What else have I got down here? The administration, communication, where we pass people from pillar to post. Also, looking at this review that we've undertaken now, which I think has taken us 4 years we've been talking, haven't we? Ken Skates, the gentleman in the Assembly, is actually making active noises. Well, there are comments coming out and some thinking is coming out from Welsh Assembly. Why are we not being updated on what is going there? Why are we not looking at what the interest is in there and contributing? So on the whole, Chairman, and you'll be pleased, I'll shut up now, I am disappointed with what has come forward. Basically, it's only what we went looking for, I suppose. But having had the opportunity lately to think, shouldn't we be thinking more strategically, more forward-looking, more 21st century? I mean, it's ridiculous. The technology is there. Going into Newport on the A4042, everybody just about seems to adhere to the 40 mile an hour to go in there. It works. And I'm sorry, I feel disappointed with this document, gentlemen. In fact, I really feel it's a repeat of what we've been doing before, but polished up a bit. So thank you for listening to me, folks.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I ran through the process, just to...
I would, yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I'll just run through the process, but first of all, perhaps Councillor Smith, I could just...
I have no concern about the process. The process is here.
Yes.
It's polishing up what we've been trying to do for years. But it's not looking ahead. There is no ambition there for this county. So I don't need any response.
No, that's okay. Just to say, though, that it's the Welsh Government that are responsible for Go Safe. It used to be part of the police, and then Welsh Government took control of that, and that's why we've got a Go Safe for Wales.
So why, during this course, have we not thought of approaching the Welsh Assembly and saying, is it appropriate this body operates independently, or could it be more efficient and useful to the public in a different format?
Would you like to come back,
If
Roger?
I could make, Madam Chairman, is what you have in front of you is what was worked up between the member and officer working group, quite frankly. So whilst I accept your concerns, I understand your concerns, but the idea of coordinating is what we came forward with, because previously it was running down different channels, it was running down the police, it was running down the local authority, it was running down GoSafe, and the idea of this is, as you suggested, to coordinate it into a single place. I'm sure that will have its challenges nevertheless, but that was the idea behind it. And members have considered it of such importance that they are supporting it with an officer and funding so to do. The technology exists, and the cameras which you speak of, the Gatso cameras, I stand to be corrected. I believe they go in by GoSafe after an assessment, after their assessments. We have looked at other technology, and my take on it, the next step, really big step, is to introduce number recognition. And I thought there was a scheme in an authority close to here, but I understand it's not worked, or it's not working at the moment. But in terms of, I think where this needs to go, this is an officer, in my personal view, is on AMPR and speed management across whatever that distance might be, the entrance to the village and exit to a village, and it can all be automated, the reading, the measurement, etc., etc. Similar to the motorway schemes, but there aren't motorway schemes which you can put into villages yet. But I think that is where a next step could be, if indeed we could get that to work. But it doesn't exist at the moment, and we have looked around at what technology might be there. I'm sure it's close, quite frankly, with the quality of vehicle recognition nowadays. I'm sure they will get there. They just haven't at the moment, but we have looked. In relation to the comments made by the ministers, I believe Lee Waters and Ken Skates have spoken about the 20-mile-an-hour zones and the importance of that. And one of the recommendations is that we work with that group to see where it's going. It's been set up, we understand, with officers from various authorities and from Welsh Government to look at practically what does it mean and how will it work, and then quite frankly, how do we fund it? But that is a piece of work which we actually reference in the report as well.
Please, Chairman.
Of course, Councillor.
So that, yes, it's technology. There's a lack of consistency within the authority. If I go into Little Mill, drive into Little Mill, there's been some good works done there, rumbly steps, yellow paint, you name it, and I don't know what the name of the speed thing that actually tells you, that I'm doing 31 miles, I'm doing 27 miles. Come to this end, going into Woodside, which doesn't have a sign that says Woodside, it just doesn't exist. It is not Usk, it's Woodside. There you've got a plain one that says 30. It just flashes up, ALAF. But you've had requests to do that. Now, it's interesting to watch the performance of drivers actually going into Little Mill as opposed to drivers going into Woodside. There is an impact. And the traffic that goes through Woodside, which then goes into the 20 mile an hour over the bridge. I cannot understand a system that said one length of that road, which carries the same volume of traffic just about, justified a 20, but the other didn't. You could do, but there's a consistency. You look at some areas in Monmouth that are getting exemplary treatment, and there are others that just cannot achieve anything. The technology's there, you know it is. The number recognition is there. The police know how to pick up things. Not only would we benefit by number recognition, the police as well, for the various people who pop down to burgle houses, it would help them. So perhaps a bit more cooperation. I do apologize.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Webb?
Yeah, just firstly, I want to just record Mr. and Mrs. Vincent's patience on all this. I mean, it has taken so long. I mean, years and years. We've gone grey overnight. I mean, all these years that we've been meeting at different meetings, etc. And I do apologise because it must be so frustrating for you to feel that we're not doing anything, but we are in the background doing things, but probably not. Everybody's not aware of that. The recommendations, Chairman, that Council endorses and approves the Monmouthshire Road Safety Strategy as a policy document which will provide guidance and clarity to officers within the safe traffic and road safety section, elected members, community councils and members of the public. It doesn't say anything about consultation. Will we have consultation on this, or is it going to is this document going to be consulted with community councils or not? And that the Council contact Welsh Government requesting membership of the 20-mile-an-hour task and finish group and offering up MCC as a pilot test authority of implementation. Here again, how long is this going to take? I mean, it's just going to take years again. In my view, it will. We'll probably be even losing here and grayer. But I really, it's just the time scale. I get very frustrated like you do, and everybody does. One thing I want to say is if we're going to have 20-mile-an-hour zones or speed limits, I think they've got to be quite, clarified and quite on the road. We don't want 20 mile an hour throughout all rural roads or anything like that. It gets people very frustrated. I'm very concerned about 20 miles an hour because I think people do get very frustrated. We get a bit frustrated in Usk, although it really works. But it's amazing how slow 20 miles an hour is, in actual fact. But there we are. Roger, would you like to... I mean, on the A466, my road from Chepstow to... Well, not my road, from Chepstow to Monmouth, it's a very, very busy road. It's one of the most visited areas in Monmouthshire, as we know, because it's got the Abbey there. We have had a couple of fatalities there. And Roger, you have been to some meetings where we're looking at special zoning from all the villages along the Wye Valley Road. And I wondered if you could explain that, whether that would incorporate in this plan, and perhaps Tintern could become one of the implementation for the zoning by Welsh Government. Well, I don't really want Welsh Government to get involved, really, but...
You should do the money.
What?
Thank you. Roger, can I also ask, can you just confirm what the recommendations are? Because you've referred to council endorses and approves.
I'll take advice on it, but I think the idea of going to council is when we discussed it at the working group, we would take it to council because that would raise awareness amongst all members rather than purely going to cabinet. So that was the rationale behind it, although I believe you could take this to cabinet to get it approved. So I'll leave that in members, as members may wish. In relation to the Tintern scheme, I'll just provide a little bit of background to that. As officers, and me in particular, I think, we've been approached by various villages, St Arvens, Tintern, Llandogo. Some work has already been done in Llandogo by colleagues, and I know more work is to be done. Some work's been done in Trellick as well, where a scheme, I believe, has been well received. It had to be amended slightly, but it has been overall well received. But we've also received requests for speed limits or reducing speed limits in the North, Penalt and Catbrook. Llandishen's got a speed limit in it, but Devorden also, we need to be seen to do some work there. In my perception of it, if we were to deal with it on individual village basis, then we could do, but I think it might be better if we put those villages together into a type of envelope scheme, for want of a better description, but to deal with it on that basis and perhaps do more than simply around traffic management, look at signage, because I know Paul has previously done work with Wye Valley AONB about having some uniformity and consistency in signage, and make it broader than simply around traffic management, and thereby perhaps having more leverage when we go to look for funding for these schemes. Because the other issue which we haven't touched upon here, but will come back round to you, is the more schemes you consider to be a priority, and the extent of those schemes will impact upon your budgets or the amount of money which we can lever in from Welsh Government down the various bidding processes which we follow. So, but in that particular instance, and I know I owe a response back to various community councils on that matter, but I believe that in that particular instance, that may be a more productive way of going forward. So Wye Valley and what I'm referring to as the top villages, or the top road for want of a better description, and to approach it in that way.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Webb?
In the essence of time, I'm just wondering if community councils can be involved with this. I mean, there shouldn't be a huge amount of cost with actually putting these gateways in. I mean, it's not millions of pounds. It's, I don't know how much, £5,000 perhaps. We've had quotes in St Albans. And I feel that the community councils could precept for this, and then we would get this work done quite quickly, in my view, as far as community councils are concerned. That, you know, it just worries me again, and I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Vincent agree that we've got to get going on this. We can't keep delaying on this, and I know Welsh Government will probably put us on the back burner. I hope they don't. Perhaps we'll talk to Ken Skates and he'll bring us under with our cabinet member. I'm sure she'll push things forward quickly, as quickly as she can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, Roger, come back.
One aspect I missed, Madam Chairman, was around the consultation. Members may recall that we went to area committees, and community councils and town councils were invited to come to those. And in fact, that's when Mr. and Mrs. Vincent did come to a previous meeting at Chepstow. So we have done extensive consultation through that route on the scheme and on the draft scheme. So we have done some consultation. We, like yourselves, await the outcome of the 20-mile-an-hour initiative from Welsh Government, both in terms of what they anticipated by that, because I think Paul's probably more au fait with it than I am, but was it intended for Divorden, or was it intended for the north of Abergavenny, and what was quite behind it, and then how does it get prioritised? But we do know the Welsh Government has set up a working group which includes some officers from local authorities to look at how that may be turned into a practical scheme to go forward, and therefore how it gets prioritised.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Webb? Okay, Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My worry is more on a local basis, and I'm going to come away from the technology aspect, but looking at what is happening within communities now and in the towns, and Chepstow is a particular issue, and that is where the way traffic is changing in the routes it takes through town. And it seems to me that our means of monitoring it isn't good enough. And the other issue for me is when we ask for, when a scheme is being presented and we put it out for comment, we have no real idea in the questionnaire that we put out now as to where the comments are coming from. We have a particular problem on Mountain Road, and I have to say the officers came and did a very good job for us on the suggestion for slowing the traffic down there. When it went out for comment, what we neglected to do, it had been put in the press so that everybody knew it was happening, and this was really an action to stop the rat runs, if you like. When we put when the project was put out in the press, what happened when people came to see the proposal and pass comment on it, what we didn't know was where the comment was coming from. So people were coming in and commenting on what we wanted to do, but we didn't know whether they were people that were impacted locally by the comment. I.e., if there's somebody who wants to come around and miss Hardwick Hill and turns up through Mountain Road and gets out by the hospital to save time and is banging his way up there at about 40 mile an hour. So the thing that concerns me basically is that we need to be a little bit more sophisticated about where we are getting the comment from and whether it is wise enough. And people who are going to make comment, which is going to be taken account of, have got to declare where they actually live, so that we have some idea of what their beef is, to be truthful, and why they are very much against what to me was a very good scheme, because it has lots of kids going down there and parents taking their children to school. Some elderly people use the road to shop with and that sort of thing. It is as much a pedestrian area almost as it is a motor area. So we need to be more thoughtful about that. And when we go for the reactions, to get the reactions from the public, we need to know who is reacting and from where, because they mightn't have the local community's interests at heart. And we ought to think about how these areas are developing because of the change of the traffic patterns. And that is beginning to become an issue for the estate that borders on to Mountain Road. Paul and I have discussed that, about that being made a 20 mile an hour development. But I think we could do a lot within rural areas if we did a bit more on, urban areas, if we did a bit more research on the information and the feedback that we get. I think it can be tilted the wrong way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Devi. Paul, Roger, would either of you like to come back?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I would just say that's very good feedback from Councillor Devi and something that we can look to incorporate in our next consultation
Devi,
on such an
can you
event.
turn your-
So
Councillor Devi, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, that's
sorry
all
to
right.
interrupt. Councillor Devi, can you turn your microphone off so it picks up? That's
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul. Can you just come back and repeat that again?
yes, I was just saying that that's comments that the comments that Councillor Devi makes is something that we can look to incorporate in the next time we do a public exhibition or consultation on a traffic scheme. We probably need to consider the data protection issues with collecting information on where people live, etc. But I'm sure we can get around that. I would say, though, at that exhibition, the one we're talking about, officers were present and discussing in detail with the people who attended the exhibition, so we would have had a flavour of where those concerns were coming from, and were they different for people who were travelling through and using it as a shortcut, or were they residents who actually lived on the street that was of concern. And at the end of the day, we do have to be mindful that the highway is there for all users, but it's about appropriate use of the highway. So we do need to be considerate of the motorist, and as Councillor Webb said earlier on, sometimes a 20 mile an hour speed limit, inappropriate speed limit, can be frustrating to the motorists, and that might even result in perhaps them going faster in other areas where it is more appropriate. And that's one of the fundamental basis of the setting local speed limits, which says that the speed limit should be set to the local environment. But the introduction of 20 mile an hour speed limits within urban residential areas is something that I think Monmouthshire would very much welcome, and we're looking for the Welsh Government now to sort of support us in terms of a process and the funding opportunities that would come with that.
Could I just say, Chairman, the speed limit and the positioning of it was totally appropriate in the area that I've been talking about. It was on the button.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure where to where to start now. We live in a massive council, area-wise. Most of it is rural. We've got hardly any police for policing, and the only way that that can be done, policing is the only way we know at the moment to get the motorists that are causing the trouble. So the only way it can be done is to hit those motorists that are flouting all the limits, is to hit them in their pockets and giving them penalty points. So we need, as Councillor Val Smith has pointed out, the only way it can be done, we haven't got the manpower to do it, we need the technology to do it. It must be out there. If everyone goes through a camera and gets caught and gets fined and has 6 points on their licence, it will soon make people realise that we are serious about the problem here. We just mustn't forget how big the county is, how many spots there are. My ward, for example, is practically urban, but there are 1 or 2 roads coming into it that come from the rural areas, and I get complaints on those roads. And we can put a little flashing sign up saying 30 miles an hour, and what good does it do? Basically, if it was a camera that caught motorists and said, right, that's 100 quid and 6 points on your licence, that's the way to do it. And it'd bring a bit of money into the authority as well, and maybe get a few irresponsible motorists off the road. It's the only way I can see we can do it.
Thank you. Is there any more questions from members? Can I ask a few questions? Is that okay, Roger? Thank you. Okay. With regards to resource implications, it doesn't really say if we actually have the resource available to manage this. Can you?
In a recent restructuring exercise, a post has been created and approved to do the coordination part. Now that in itself purely helps us to manage the demand and to prioritise the demand. It doesn't actually fund any schemes which then get approved. We will do that either through our own capital budget, which then takes its chance with resurfacing and structures and any other improvements you have to do, or through bidding. And I know colleagues bid to Welsh Government for funding to undertake schemes. And in this year we've got 70,000, I think it is, to put in a 20-mile-an-hour zone in Bulwark and Thornwell. So we do get funding for that. We've had funding in other years. So that's the funding route. So, but it is reliant then upon what success we have in bidding for those schemes. But the actual staffing issue, as I say, is subject to budget demands. It has been established, so as such is part of your budget. The reason I'm hesitating is because members are quite aware of the budget pressures which you have. But nevertheless, it is there and it is in the establishment.
Chairman, yes, we certainly do. We have a road safety officer that is employed within our traffic and road safety team, and they work with other authorities, in particular the Old Gwent region, where they sort of share resources, and they also look at statistics and identify where we should be targeting resources to try and improve road safety through education and encouragement. That's the words, because you have just to go back on, you've got the 4 E's for road safety, and that's engineering, which is where we put in physical measures and speed limits. And then we have enforcement, which is at the moment the police's responsibility for where people get fined and prosecuted for speeding or inappropriate behaviour, driving behaviour. And then we have education and encouragement, and that's really what the role of our road safety officer is, in terms of trying to working through the road safety strategy that was referred to earlier on as being a very professional document. That's something that they work to, and in particular in Monmouthshire, for instance, we have a higher usage of people riding horses on the highway. So the road safety officer would work with those groups and motorists in rural areas to try and promote safer driving and behaviour when you're in your horses. And similarly with cycling, Monmouthshire is quite a cycling capital within Wales, and so we're trying to promote more safe cycling, and we actually hold cycle training events as well, and we do a lot of close work with the schools as well as elderly people, elderly drivers and disabled groups as well. So there's a lot of work going on in terms of road safety education and encouragement, and our road safety officer is very up to date with social media, and that's something that we're looking to build on in the future.
The only other point I'd like to add, Madam Chairman, is if and when Cabinet or Council approve this, seems like an ideal opportunity to use social media and the press to raise awareness and generate a launch and generate interest using the links as you suggest. Not that I'm a great social media advocate or user, but I'm sure there are people who are.
Can I just come back? I accept what Paul said. As someone that horse rides and rides a bike, I wear high vis, I wear Please Plus wide and slow, flashing lights. It's not us, usually, I say, that's the problem. It's the drivers that are on the road who have very little care in regards to cyclists and horse riders and pedestrians, especially when we've got roads in south of the county that don't actually have a pedestrian pathway, but that's a different argument. It's getting the message to them. You can educate your youngsters in school, your young people, in schools. You can educate your older drivers. You can educate your cyclists. I think when you are the other side of the fence on the roads, you're a lot more aware of it. So you usually find those people don't carry out the same behaviours. It's how we target those offenders who don't respect speed limits and, are dangerous on the roads, because, there's numerous accidents happening all over the county. So it's those that we need to target more so rather than the groups, I feel, although I do believe educating those groups and how they use the roads and how to make themselves as safe as possible is just as important. It's targeting those people that think they can drive 50 mile an hour through Undy Omega, for instance. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Well, going back on what you just said, that's the problem. It's targeting them, That's what is needed to be done, but who's going to be there to do it? If this document is going to the Cabinet, Mr. Vincent put some very interesting points that I wish I'd had, if you like, alongside this document. You have an opportunity then, Mr. Vincent, if it's going to the to Cabinet, to make sure your points go along with it if you possibly can, so that when we're reading what is going before the Cabinet or, in fact, full council, we've got your points there as well, and I think that would be quite useful. But the bottom line is, as we keep mentioning, it's irresponsible people out there, just reinforced by what the chairman has said, and we need to hammer them as hard as we possibly can. And there's so many points throughout the county that need this special care. It just couldn't be policed. So once again, technology needs to be brought to the fore. Thank you, Chair.
I did ask, obviously there is some format changes that Mr. Vincent requested. Is there any items you'd like to raise or change? Am I allowed to ask this? Yeah, sorry, I was just checking, I'm really new to it. Is there any actual changes you'd like to see in the report that maybe you could help, have some input into it?
I would be more than willing to help. In fact, I've offered to help for 3 years. I've offered, and it was suggested when this was first promoted that there was going to be a speed management strategy, that the experience case study as to, if you want, the way not to do it, as far as responding to a community might be. I would be more than happy to help out in any way I can. What I'm not absolutely mad about is, I'm afraid, putting or spending more of my time, which some councillors know that I've done and have been doing for years, in producing quite detailed comments and documents, which I submit, and I then end up with exactly the same document going forward that there was a year ago. All the various examples that I gave of cutting and pasting evidence, if you want, were given to Highways in paper or on paper in March 2019. They were given to 2 council members and 3 members of Highways, and they're still there in the document now. And I find that a little bit depressing that I, as a member of public, have gone to the trouble of
What I'm saying, Mr. Vincent, that there are a few councillors here. Full council, there's 43, and you know, your comments interested me and put a different context on some of the stuff here. If the same thing applies when we're looking at it in full council, then that's where we as a body can say, oh, quite like that, really we want to see that in there, or don't like that, etc., etc. You know, there will be an opportunity for us then to say, yeah, we will endorse this report, but only if you put these changes in, etc., etc. You will at least give us the opportunity of doing something, or trying to do something about it. Let's put it that way.
What I'd like you to do, if you'd be happy to do it, I'd like you to send the document in. You can send it to me. I will then pass on to Roger and the team, and I ensure those changes will be made before it goes to Cabinet, and then it can be amended with them. Would you like, is that
Sorry,
okay?
Madam Chairman, the only point I would make that obviously Mr. and Mrs. Vincent can submit their proposals, suggestions. If it's a matter of drafting, then we can do that. If it's a matter of substance, then it has to come back to you as members. I would suggest that council is not the best vehicle to do that. To try and change a policy as important as this, don't take this the wrong way, but, you know, impromptu almost at council is probably not the right way to do it. But got a huge amount of respect for what Mr. Vincent may offer. So I would suggest in the event of that, and I'll discuss it with Councillor Pratt, was chair of that working group, I'll discuss it with Councillor Pratt if we consider there to be sufficient substance in that we reconvene the working group for one more time to look at that and then to make those amendments ready to go back into council. We may have to bring it back here if it's a matter of substance. We'll have to judge that according to what comes forward.
Is everyone happy with that?
I think that's very sensible. I'd only ask, there's not a time limit on this. Obviously, it's not urgent that it's done in 2 months' time, etc.
Yeah.
You know, is there a time constraint? That's what I'm asking.
Only the urgency placed upon it by members, quite frankly, because members have suggested today that they'd like to see this done and dusted. And therein lies the tension, and quite rightly said, the point's been made that, you know, we have been 18 months or longer putting this together, so when are we going to come to a conclusion? But nevertheless, if Mr. Vincent's happy to submit that again, I think it's again, isn't it, because you've done it before, and then we can check the draft in, pick up matters of, if they're matters of substance, then we'll bring it back to the working group or even strong communities meeting prior to it going to council. But I would suggest you don't try and change a policy in full council.
Councillor Dovey?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've been listening intently to this debate and the putting together of this document. The thought goes through my mind, if what is said is absolutely true, we need to put our own house in order before we do anything else. And that means we need proper proofreading in here, which is more than just about spelling, grammar and whatnot. It's all about whether what you put in there is congruent with what the council's policy is, and those sort of issues. I think Mr. Vincent has served this council well in many ways over a very few years. I think, Mr. Vincent, we've been knocking into one another at different places, and you giving my ear a chewing about something or other anyway. But I think it is. I think it is down to us to get this together on our own and put it right. If at the end of the day the document is, as we believe, right, factually, it is a reflection of the council policy, and all those sort of issues are appropriate. I do not see an issue if we can agree a sort of confidentiality thing with Mr. Vincent before it goes out. I don't see a problem with he having a view of it, or indeed in stages as it goes along. But my strong view is, and it is not a reflection at all, my strong view is we get this right ourselves in every detail. It isn't right if these suggestions in here are wrong, that it's been copied and pasted and whatnot. That is down to us to get right, and I think we should set our mind to doing that, and that should be an exemplar about the way we go in every other policy document throughout the council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. Are there any more comments, Councillor Webb?
Can I just have a bit more clarification on 2.2 of the recommendations? It says that Council contact Welsh Government requesting membership. Is this likely to be available to us? And it says that they're offering up a MCC as a pilot test. Is this a goer or not, or how far has this got, or is there a time limit on this? Is this time? I'd like to know a bit more about this, actually, this Welsh Government side of things.
Well, publish.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Paul, Roger, would one of you like to come back?
I believe the group has already been established by Welsh Government now. And there is an officer representing a neighbouring authority. That doesn't stop us from making representations to that group in any event. I'm not aware whether my colleagues can offer any further on that, whether or not any pilot authorities have yet been selected, but we can still, if not, then we can still make that case. But first of all, we need to understand in a little bit more detail quite what is anticipated when they say 20 mile an hour is the safe thing. We think we know what it is, but we would like that clarified, and also the issue around funding. There will be costs associated with putting in 20 mile an hour zones extensively throughout your urban areas.
I once again say that community and town councils can precept as long as their residents agree with this. They're not capped, we are, and I'm sorry that I keep harping on about this, but we should take advantage of community and town councils and make sure that they do some work and put implementations in with regard to this if they feel that it's a real problem in their areas. Sorry.
No, thank you, Councillor Webb. Are you happy for me to now sum up? I've got many notes here. I'll try to be as accurate as I possibly can, but please step in if I don't. Okay, obviously we've scrutinised this policy and how it has been developed. We think there's a number of changes and amendments that could be made and some comments for you to take on board. Councillor Webb obviously noted that she'd like to see more extensive consultation with regards to community councils and more involvement from them. Councillor Dovey, you asked about public consultation and comments on where they're coming from and where their designation, is that correct? You'd like to know where they're going, why they're using the roads throughout Monmouthshire? Yeah.
When we ask for a public response, what part, and we put a document in for them to put their response on, what is important is to know what area these people reside in, because that gives us an idea of where they're travelling from and to. Because I am minded that I believe a lot of the responses that came to the project that we had in my area particularly, well, it wasn't mine, it was the whole of that side of Chepstow. I believed a lot of those responses came from people that were outside the area that was being affected. And so they had other fish to fry. And that was altering the nature of what the result should have been. And do you understand what I'm trying to say? They should at least be made to declare the postal code from where they reside, because it is all about local people and the problems they have to put up with, and the children and the risk factors. And indeed, I know Paul is very keen on that, and we did an exercise in Mall Street for the 2 schools in there before
Thank you,
we
Councillor Dovey.
came up with the proposal. So
That's
all
fine.
right.
We understand.
Okay.
We can't let it turn into another debate, but thank you. Councillor Webb.
Just a real quickie. When the road was closed, the A466, I did do a bit of a survey and asked where people had come from and where they were going. And I was asked if I ruled the world, and I said I did.
Thank you for that, Councillor Webb. Obviously, we've heard of Mr. and Mrs. Vincent here today, and I thank you very much for coming. If you could please email your comments, we'll then get the task working group together, we'll review it, and obviously oversee any necessary changes that are required. Are you all happy with that before it goes to Cabinet? Is it going to Cabinet or Council? Because we did say. Council then.
Yeah, if I can just step in. I mean, it's not presently part of the council's policy framework, so it doesn't, in terms of the policy framework, require a council decision. But as members, you decide this is an issue of such importance across the whole county that it may warrant a council debate and decision. So perhaps that's something that we'll discuss and sort of advise on outside of the meeting.
Is there anything else? I think I've covered everything. Yep.
My bit, enforcement.
Enforcement.
Saying you naughty boy and don't do anything about it.
No, we all agree with that, Roger. I think we all suffer from the same problem wherever our wards are based. Is that okay, Roger? Paul, thank you ever so much for coming today. Thank you all. It was lovely to see you back after a little break. Thank you. Oh, sorry, just one last thing. Do we have the date and time of the next meeting? Usually it is.
It's not on the agenda. I think it's the 26th. I should just check.
With regards to council or cabinet? Yes. And our next meeting is the 26th of September at 10 a.m. Another busy month. Thank you.